Welcome back, everybody. We hope that you enjoyed the last episode. And as always, today I am with Father Tone.
Hello, everyone.
And Father Tone, we have a special holiday coming up soon. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that holiday is and its little origins that we have?
Yeah, so we're gonna have Halloween, right?
Mhm.
So it's very interesting to me because in Vietnam we didn't have this holiday, so we didn't celebrate Halloween before, but now we do. So when I first came here to the United States, and I said, "Wow, there's a holiday about Halloween," so I get to know about the Halloween. And it just happened that Father Tieso last Sunday bulletin he wrote about the Halloween a little bit. So Father Tiersho said with all the parishioners the conversation that he had with Pat Kimak, DRE, and he pointed out like so during Halloween we tried to dress up with certain characters, either like Mary Poppins or so many funny characters, and then he said that like so when we are dressed up in certain costumes, and then we try to imitate the people or the characters that we are dressed at. So it's very interesting to me. So I just went back online and looked for the origin of Halloween, and this is what I have found. I'll read for you. So it says that tradition originated with the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. And then in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as a time to honor all saints. And then soon All Saints' Day incorporated some of the traditions of Samhain. The evening before was known as All Hallows Eve and later Halloween. So All Hallows Eve is like All Saints' Days Eve. It's similar to Christmas Eve. So the tradition, like we would like to baptize the pagan culture, right? So we acknowledge that they are celebrating and we would like to celebrate with them. But the intention, like, yes, we want to Christianize it. We would like to not like just celebrate with the like the earthly thing, but we would like to focus on a higher aim, right? So we have a goal to celebrate. So maybe when people dress up as funny characters, it's reminded them that like yes, if they dress up as like evil forces, right? We know that the Lord would like to cast out that power so that we can live as His beloved children. And then if they dress up as saints or beautiful characters, well, we aiming them, or we would like to say that yes, this is our vision, right? To be like in the heaven. So it's very interesting about the Halloween. So
hmm Yeah, absolutely. And just like you said, um, we should try to strive and be like the saints that we celebrate actually the day after Halloween, November 1st, which is
mhm.
All Saints' Day, which is the celebration of every single saint, whether known or unknown to the earth.
Yes. So with that, it just a thought came to me, Ben. Like I have a dream. I just have a dream. I'm excited. Like when I mean, with this recognition, right? If the Catholic, instead of like we dress up as pumpkin or banana or whatever, we dress up as saint for Halloween to be a witness for the world. I mean, it would be amazing. Like think about
Mm-hmm.
like every single Catholic, right? Instead of like following the world dressing up as spider or spider web or whatever scary thing, right? We dress up as something that holy to express our interior desire, our I don't know, our soul, our yearning for heaven, for the Lord. I think it would be a wonderful way to evangelize, and at the same time, a wonderful way to say, "Hey, I'm happy. I'm not sad
Mm-hmm.
and gloomy." You know.
Absolutely. And if someone asked like, "Oh, who are you dressed up as?" and you say like, "Oh, it's Saint whatever saint you're dressed up as, they might go and look up who that saint is and learn a little bit about them.
Yes, I know, right? Because it's so funny, man. Because yesterday I went to Cardinal Joseph Bernardin to give a talk, and then I asked them what do they dress like for Halloween or what is their costume, and then they told me, and I didn't know that character, so I asked for more information about that character. So similar to when you say, right, if people dress up as a saint, and then the other person didn't know about their costume, and then they will be curious and ask, and then look for more information. So yes, good way to spread the good news.
Absolutely. So for today's episode, we actually have 3 saints that we're going to talk about, and kind of a way to celebrate All Saints Day. So the first saint that I want to talk about is Moses the Black. And Father,
Moses the Black.
Yes. I have never heard of Saint Moses the Black until I looked for an interesting saint that I'd never heard of to talk about on this episode. Are you familiar with him, Father?
I have no idea, so you can teach me as well.
Yes, so he has a great story. So Moses the Black was born in 330 AD, and he was a slave of a government official for Egypt. But he was kicked out of Egypt because he was found to be a thief and possibly a murderer, which it was interesting from the beginning that they kicked him out instead of just throwing him in jail or executing him, because that was kind of more common then. So instead of being in Egypt, he was forced to go to the Nile Valley, and he joined a violent gang of robbers who basically roamed the valley and robbed everybody, and he eventually actually became the leader of this group.
Wow.
And one day he was going to rob someone, but there was a barking dog that alerted the owner, and the person hid and took all their possessions, and he couldn't do anything. So he became so upset. He swore vengeance upon that owner, and a few days later he went back with weapons in hand. And he was planning on killing the owner and then robbing. But then the dog started to bark again, and he couldn't find the owner because the owner hid again. And in order to get his revenge, he decided to take some of the person's sheep, and he slaughtered them. And this caused authorities to look for Moses the Black. And so he had to go into hiding, and when in hiding, he found a community that was run by some monks. And the monks had no idea who he was, had no idea he was on the run from the law. So he just kind of settled in that community and lived there. And he was impressed of their dedication of their life, as well as their peace and contentment. And they had a huge impact on him. And he actually converted to Christianity and was baptized.
Oh, wow.
And he joined the community, and he eventually became a priest as well.
Oh, wow.
But he struggled extremely hard when he first joined the community, because he was so used to living the style that he was when he was the gang leader. He had a really hard time praying, and he had a really hard time adapting to the slower paced life than what he was used to. But one day a group decided that they were going to rob this monastic community, and Moses individually fought off the robbers, and he was going to kill them. But then he took a moment and paused and realized that that's not what Christians do. So he picked up the robbers and brought them to the chapel where monks were praying. And these robbers were so moved and amazed by what had just happened that they actually joined the community as well. They had the complete life change as well. And as many years later, Moses became known as a great spiritual advisor and known for his forgiveness of others. But he felt like he could never do enough for God. And he thanked God every day for causing him to have that change of life. And there was one story where they were going to put a monk on trial for some sin. And Moses, it's debated on whether it was water or sand, but he put something in a sack and punctured a hole in it and had all the sins, or all the sand or water, run out the back of it. And he said, "You're judging this man for the sins that he committed, yet what I have running behind me is the sins, and it's behind me because God forgives me." as we should
Oh, I
forgive
see.
him. Um,
Wow.
so he was known for his great spiritual advising and great forgiveness, just like that. Um, and so in 405 AD,
Hmm.
they got word that the community was going to be robbed. And Moses
Hmm.
was an old man at this point.
Hmm.
And everybody started to arm up and prep for a fight. And
Hmm.
they were going to defend their community. However, Moses told them to retreat because taking violent action was not who the monastic community was. And he
Hmm.
quoted the scripture, when Jesus said, "He who lives by the sword dies by the sword."
Hmm.
So everybody retreats, but Moses was so old he couldn't really retreat. So he stayed behind with 7 others and was martyred.
Hmm.
Um, and today, Saint Moses the Black, is known as the patron saint of criminals and nonviolence.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember reading this story, and I was just absolutely amazed. Like I never heard of him, but I just found that totally fascinating. And it was a great
Yes.
way to kind of learn of the importance of a conversion of heart and forgiveness at the same time.
Hmm. Yes, absolutely. Then I'm captivated about the story that you just told me about Moses the Black as well. Like you mentioned a few details, right? When he were converted to to become a priest later on, right? But it's so tough for him to live a life of a slower pace and with everything, right? And be subjected to the superior, right?
Hmm.
Because he was the head of the gang. So I think it took a lot of humility for Moses to took that slow pace and obey and live in that monastic life with all the priests and brothers. And I'm just amazed how he handled the robbers who came to him. I mean, he brought the robbers to the monks who were praying and they were converted at that time. It's just like so question of him, right?
Hmm.
Not react to violence by using violence, but react against the violence with love, which he imitated Christ, right?
Hmm.
And it's beautiful to see the robbers converted and then stay with the monks in that monastery and see how moving that beautiful prayer, right? Move the robbers because more than often we say, "Wow, that's old prayers, right? Who's pray nowadays, right? Who changed to nowadays?" But look at that beautiful prayers; it converted hearts. So it's beautiful. I
Hmm.
love that story.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and I was just like, I just find it amazing that we just see the vast change in
Hmm.
Moses from going to see that he wanted to kill someone because their dog made him not be able to rob them,
Hmm.
to telling his fellow monks and brothers to go ahead and leave because they can't kill anybody because that's not the Christian life. It
Hmm.
just shows such a turn in who he was and a turn and like how God changed him and called him to be higher. And it's
Hmm.
kind of like a way that we could today kind of look and see how is God calling us and calling us to be higher and change and maybe go against what the culture would say to do, because the culture
Hmm.
would say in that situation to defend the community and not retreat.
Yes, yes. It's a beautiful insight. Yeah, because like St. Paul, right? He talked about the new self and the old self very often in scripture. So the old self is the self that we cling to the fleshy desire, right? We would like to say yes to the society without using our intellect and our free will to think and to decide to do or not to do. Our new self is like we put on Christ after our baptism to live with a higher purpose in life, right? We focus in heaven, like the saint, right? They focus on a higher realm after the conversion of heart that they have. So that's beautiful. Yes,
Hmm.
we should follow
Yes.
him absolutely.
Hmm. Absolutely. And Father, I'm wondering, is there a saint that you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so we you talk about the converter, and I'm gonna talk about a convert as well. So there's a saint, a Vietnamese saint, his feast day is November 24th. So I'm going to talk about him today. So once in a while, people would ask me like, why the Vietnamese, if they are Catholic, why they are still so passionate about their faith, like the way they practice the faith and the way that they give and the way that they just cling to the church. For example, like if you go to the Vietnamese parish, they didn't spend much money to spend for example, like maintenance or choir or music. It just all volunteer. People
Mm.
just like after mass, they stay a few hours after mass and they clean the whole church. And if there's something that needs to be done, they will send the people like the one who know to fix stuff and they fix it. Or like the choir or music, right? They usually have around 3 to 5 different choirs directed by 3 to 5 different music directors and all free.
Mm.
So people question me, why do they have that passion to serve the Lord and the church? Well, then because of the martyrdom that Vietnamese experienced is still very new to them. Uh, is only like around 1820 to 1862 where the martyrdom happened. That's why some people who had relative were a martyr before. So I mean, it's very fresh for them in terms of the faith and the martyrdom. So the saint today I would like to talk about is Andrew Dũng Lạc. So he was converted when he was, I think, around 12 years old. He was born in 1795 and died 1839. So he converted because his family sent him to follow a missionary priest. And then the priest taught him many things, and at the end he was converted. And then later on he became a priest.
Mm.
So similar route in one
Mhm.
way or another with Moses the Black. Huh? So he was converted and became a parish priest. So he moved from one village to another village to evangelize because the faith in Vietnam at that time is very new to the Vietnamese. So we have a lot of missionary from France came to Vietnam to evangelize, but now we have a local, right? Local priest who know the language, didn't need a translator, travel from one village to another village to evangelize. So it's under the persecution for Christianity of Minh Mang dynasty. So the king doesn't like Catholic. He think that Catholic is the Western evil spirit try to corrupt humanity heart. So
Mm.
they try to persecute Christianity. So Father Andrew was captured a few times by the local officer, and and the people usually they give money to the governor, and then the governor will release Father Andrew, and then the third time when Father Andrew was captured, he said that, well, this time you shouldn't pay money to get me out of the prison
Mm.
because he related to Saint Peter when Saint Peter was captured in the prison and the angel of the Lord came and rescued him for a mission. So going to talk more about the Lord, right? So he say, if God's will me to be a martyr for him, uh, think about Peter. He rescued Peter a few times, but at the end, when it's Peter time to die for the faith, and Peter wanted to run away, right? And he saw a vision of Jesus carrying the cross back to Jerusalem to be crucified for Peter. So Father Andrew told people that like I'm ready to be a martyr for the Lord if God's willing. So don't give the officer or the governor money to rescue me because they are abusing you all and the people was crying. They say, well, if you become a martyr and you go to heaven with the Lord, but how about us? Who is going to take care of us on earth? Because people are still new to the faith, so they say there's no priest to take care for them. But Father Andrew say God will has a way. Uh, so it's amazing about the whole story that he wrote, and then he sent it to the bishop. One story he told the bishop that so the governor they would like Father Andrew to deny the faith by step over the crucifix or the holy image, and so when his friend is asked to do so, they both denied, and the soldier would brought them over the crucifix. So we dragged them over the crucifix. So one priest he was able to hold the holy image on his hands, so he didn't step over. But then for the Father Andrew, because the soldier lift him up and then carry him over the cross. At that time, he prayed that the soldier would cut his feet so that he would not like step over the crucifix. And later on, it's a struggle for him with that experience. So he wrote the letter to the bishop expressing the reality in the prison. And later on, he was beheaded. So yeah, it's a wonderful example to for us, right? About being converted, and then an example for us to live out our faith, and an example for us to overcome the challenges that are presented in our life when we have to face with. Yeah, that's why when people ask me why Vietnamese are still very faithful, practicing the faith and get involved in the church, I think because the blood of the martyr is still very new, very fresh for them. And like I said before, right, some people still have some relative who were martyrs before, so and they're still alive. I mean, the relative are still alive, so they say, well, my great grandfather is a martyr, you know.
Wow. So that was a really amazing story, and I find it so interesting that he drew upon the words and actions of Saint Peter. And just yesterday in my Christology class, we were looking at how what Pope Benedict XVI would call the infant Christian communities. So not like the very first Christians, but a few Christians later. And we were looking at how they saw kind of like how they're living out the Christian lifestyle. And they often drew upon the words and actions of St. Peter. Especially there's a passage in 1 Peter, the book, and it talks about how just as Christ suffered and was the suffering servant Messiah, you too will suffer for his sake and for his name. And I'm sure St. Andrew as well kind of drew upon Peter's words and looked very similar to how those infant Christian communities did.
Oh, wow. So you are taking Pope Benedict 16.
So yeah, it's a Christology class, but we're using a lot of Pope Benedict's works on Jesus. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's interesting because when you talk about the infant church, usually took the word of Saint Peter or the apostles. I'm taking church father now, and it's exactly the same. Like whenever they have to face with a heresy or heretic, they would say, all right, what Saint Peter say, what Saint Paul say. So the church fathers would cling to scripture all the time. So it's just a parallel, right? Infant church at that time as well, because the church is still new. Yes, but you say we are going to talk about 3 saints, right? What is the third saint that you want to share with us?
The third saint is someone that I knew a little bit about, not a lot, but I did some more reading again last night, and was fascinated by his story as well. It's different compared to the other two that we've talked about today. But so now I'm going to talk about Saint Simeon Stylite, and he lived actually around the same time as Saint Moses the Black. He was born around 390. It's not 100% sure, but there's a lot of historical context that plays into his story. So in 395, the Roman Empire split between East and West, and the town that he lived on was on the Eastern Empire. And there, Christianity spread really, really quickly. And when he was the age of 13, he read the Beatitudes, and he was amazed by the Beatitudes and just wanted to learn more and more and more about it. So he was talking to like the smartest people he knew, the people who understood the faith the best, and all about the Beatitudes and how to live out the Beatitudes. And so 3 years after he just learned about Christianity, at the age of 16, he entered a monastery. But he was asked to leave the monastery after he was deemed not able to live in a community for his ascetic lifestyle. But the reason he lived like that is because he wanted to be alone, and so he could focus on his holiness, because that's when he felt closest to God. So in response, he wanted to prove that his lifestyle was one that brings him close to God and gets him to where he wants to be faith-wise. So he shut himself in a hut for a year and a half, and during Lent, he wouldn't eat or drink anything. And they say that him surviving that is considered one of his miracles. But eventually, like, people became more and more, people knew more and more about him and wanted more and more spiritual advice from him, because he became this great spiritual leader. But he didn't really have time to focus on himself. So he moved to a very small mountainous area, and he was there for many, many years. And then pilgrims would come and take a very, very, very difficult trip up this mountain just to seek advice from him and talk to him. And then they would go down this mountain very dangerously. But it was happening so often that, again, he couldn't focus on his relationship with God. So in order to get the time that he wanted alone, he decided to climb to a top of a pillar about 10 feet off the ground and live on this very small platform. He would never leave that platform. He, to get food and drink, there'd be these boys from the town that would either climb to the top of the platform and give it to him, or they used like a pulley system and would give him food. And eventually he actually changed from this platform that was 10 feet off the ground to one that was 50 feet off the ground.
Wow.
And these were, it was basically at this place that was in ruins after a natural disaster. And these are just the pillars that were remaining standing. And he would essentially be on this block that was about 1 meter across and in height. And it was very, very small, and he'd be there his whole life. He vowed to never get off this pillar, in order to live the call that he felt that God had. But there were these monastic elders that heard about what was happening and decided to test him to see if what he was doing was out of humility or out of pride. And they were testing him and ordered him to come off. And the test was, if he refused to come off, they knew it would be out of pride. But if he was willing to come off, they knew it would be out of humility and was a call from God. So Simeon obeyed their order and was about to come off. But the elders then knew it was a humble action, and an action to get closer to God. So they allowed him to stay up there. And he, like, although he wanted to be alone, he knew that God still called him to work for the people and work with the people. So he didn't quite ignore them. He made himself available to talk to and receive advice from and spiritual direction from in the afternoon. And how that would do is people would climb this ladder, and they wouldn't be able to get to the top of the pillar where he was at, but they'd be able to get close enough to where they could speak and have a conversation.
I see.
But there was one time he got so sick. And at this point of his life, he was very famous again. And the emperor of the area sent 3 bishops to go to him and convince him to come down and receive medical help. But he refused. He said he trusted that God would heal him, and eventually that happened. He was cured from this illness, and he became so many people wanted to see him and hear his preaching, because he started to preach, that they had to form walls around him to ensure that he would be safe, and that he'd be able to stay in a peaceful state of mind and not be disturbed. And one day his mother actually came to him and asked him to come down, and he responded, quote, "If you are worthy, we shall see another in a life to come." So even his own mother couldn't get him to come down from this pillar. And actually she was so struck about what she had heard from her son and seen that she actually took up a very similar lifestyle. She wasn't on top of a pillar like he was, but she lived like a very semi-cloistered life and kind of like alone, being with God and in constant prayer, just like Saint Simeon was. And it was estimated that he lived atop of this pillar for about 35 to 42 years.
Oh, wow.
But one day they were trying to get his food up to him, and they couldn't get it to him. So a little boy climbed to the top very dangerously and found that he was dead in a prayerful posture. And when I was reading this, I just found his story extremely interesting as well.
Yes, that's a beautiful story about Saint Simeon. So it struck me, there are a few things that struck me most. For example, enter into the solitude with the Lord. And I think when we encounter that divine in our life, like when we are able to contact or have a conversation with the Lord, we just don't want any distraction in our life to interfere that conversation. That why he keep moving higher and higher, right? To be with the Lord in that capacity. And talking about obedience, huh? when we priest, right, either diocesan or religious community, we before our ordination we vow for obedience to the bishop or the superior if you are in the community. And with that, right, he obeyed, right? He obeyed. So it's a beautiful example for obedience. And when you mentioned about people seeking for counsel, right? So we will recognize, right? We will recognize who's a prayerful person who give a good counsel, and those counsel are from the Lord or from that person himself or herself, right? We recognize it right away. So I think by the fact that so many people wanted to go through all the obstacle, right? Go to the high mountain and then get to him for spiritual advices because they recognize that he's a prayerful man, is in dialogue with the Lord, and whatever he gave them is from the Lord, not from himself. So it's a beautiful example to see.
Yeah, and what really stood out to me was the fact that he knew he needed time to have himself close to the Lord, but he also knew that he was still called to serve the people. So he didn't completely ignore people. He still listened to them. He still preached for them. He still gave them spiritual direction, which I find completely fascinating. That he knew that was still part of God's plan for him.
Yes, beautiful, right? Yeah, because I think it takes a lot of time to be patient and listen to the voice of the Lord to discern which one is from the Lord and which one is from ourselves. And I think when our heart is moved with love, and the Lord will continue to give us more guidance. Like for example, Saint Simeon, right? Is that his heart is still with the people in that communion, right? In that community, because we are created for community, not for individuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's beautiful to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And also, not long after All Saints Day, we also celebrate All Souls Day, which is where
Mhm.
we pray for the people who have passed before us. So,
Mhm.
Father, do you want to talk a little bit about how this kind of reminds us of the vision of the church for us?
Yeah, so we relate to the vision of the church to baptize the pagan culture about Halloween, right? It's the
Mm-hmm.
All Saints Eve day, right? And then leading to also, so the vision of the church, I think we recognize that the saints are in heaven with the Lord, and that is the goal for every single Christian to go to when we die, right? So the people who have passed away before us, either our relatives, our friends, or the people that we don't know, and we are not certain that they are with the Lord and with the saints in heaven. So we pray for them, right? We offer masses for them. We say rosaries for them with the hope that they will go to heaven. So the vision for us, right? So this is heaven, and some people are in purgatory, and we need to get them into heaven by using our prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So we just hope that this episode you learned a little bit about the three saints that we talked about, and
Mhm.
that on All Saints Day that you remember a saint that's either close to your heart or
Mhm.
has you have special attachment to, and on All Souls Day that you pray for everybody who has passed before us as well.
Mhm.
So we would like to thank you for listening. Please share and stay tuned for our next episode, which will come out November 11th. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.